Whenever you are.
Let's get started. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mary Ann, please take the roll.
Here.
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 Here. Mr. Grisson, our president, had to be out of town on business today. He is available, but it's a little difficult to do it remotely. So, according to our policy as vice president, I'm going to preside over the meeting today. Next item on the agenda is recognitions. John, would you like to do it with?
Oh, okay.
Student recognitions. Volunteers make a difference in individual lives as well as communities. To recognize these efforts, the Sheriff's Office of Cook County annually sponsors the Sheriff's Office Commitment to Service Awards. This award was given to residents of Cook County in grades 9 through 12 who provided meaningful volunteer service to their communities. A minimum of 100 hours of voluntary, unpaid community service is required to qualify for this award. Congratulations to the following students. Stephanie Ariguin, Jessica Bajaric, Michael Suzuki, Michael, stay up in front till we go through it, okay? Nina Corrigan,
Good job, Nina.
Here you go.
Rowan Elwart, Jadsirit Hernandez, Robert Holobeck, Caitlin Krivak, Madeline Meehan, Peyton Murray, Sophia Ramirez, Joshua Ramft, Connor Raymond, and Anna Stivers. Would you, hold on, before you go, what did you...
Just landed in Europe yesterday.
Oh, okay. Why doesn't everybody tell the audience and the board, maybe we'll start over here and go that way, what you did your volunteer time for us, so you have an idea.
Or some of the projects if you scan, yeah, just...
Well, I mainly did tutoring young children.
Oh, really?
Oh, awesome.
Very good. Okay, Caitlin?
A lot of my hours came from working with the Tri-M, so I would tutor young students around 5th grade with music lessons, and then on Sundays I would help out at St. Louis de Marillac School and assistant teach 1st grade.
Awesome.
Wow, very good.
I volunteer at Hinsdale Hospital.
Oh, nice.
Great.
I volunteer for my gymnastics, my church, and then the Forest Preserve was a big one.
Awesome.
I volunteered at a community service program at the Field Museum.
Great.
I volunteer here at RB athletic training like almost every day.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Anna volunteered a lot of soup kitchens in Chicago.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Nice job, everybody.
Thank you for doing that.
Please continue to give back to the community, even though you receive this reward. Those hours of service are something you'll cherish and respect for the rest of your life. So keep doing that. That's outstanding.
On the next order of business, we move on to reports. The first report is the Student Association report.
Hello. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So we'll go over names. I'm Michelle. I'm the president.
I'm Taylor. I'm the treasurer.
I'm Rowan, I'm the vice president.
Okay.
So we've done a lot of great things over these past few months. We'll start off with November. In November, we had our blood drive, and we collected 104 pints, which saved 312 people. So that was really great. We're really excited about that and have another one coming up. And then we also had our Thanksgiving baskets. It was my committee, actually, and it was super fun to get the whole school involved and collect food for families in need through CSS in Brookfield. And we collected 17 baskets, which was really great. And then we also had the Santa Anonymous, which is when a class sponsors to collect either money or presents to support one person from CSS to give them Christmas presents and anything they may want during the Christmas season. And we were able to help 13 people. And then we also had our first Spirit Dress-Up Day of December, and we did tacky holiday sweaters, which was really fun. The whole school really got involved, and it was one of the highest participations we've had, so that was really great.
Very good.
Yeah, and then to continue on, a few other things we did in November, December was our coat and blanket drive, and I was in charge of that, which was really fun. And we had 37 blankets, 103 coats, and 166 other stuff like hats, scarves, gloves, etc. So we made a grand total of 306 articles of clothing, which was really good. And then me and a couple of people from Student Association, we went to the church in Oak Brook, and we got to actually bring all the stuff there, and it was crazy. It was so cool to see everything there because they had so much stuff already, and all their everything that's already there goes to the Salvation Army. So it was really fun and interesting to see. And then also we do Spirit Fridays, and so on Fridays we have dress-up day, and then it's your 5th hour teacher has to see how many people actually participated. And this time we have Mr. O'Rourke's class 1, and so they have a pizza party coming up actually this Friday, so it's really fun.
So then after break in January was the Future Bulldog Night. And so from what we saw sitting at our tables for the different clubs and stuff, it looked like a really good turnout. But we did get a couple feedbacks that were, they were wondering, so it was kind of hard to find the clubs and activities they were looking for because band is kind of in their own separate hallway. And so what we thought was so when we were incoming freshmen, we were in the main gym or the field house, and it was just way easier for us to just find the clubs because all the names were up. So that was just some feedback we got back. And then, so in February, so upcoming, on the 20th, we have our 2nd annual blood drive. And then we are going to have, on the 14th, our 2nd Spirit Dress-Up Day, which is a grade level color day, because we didn't do that during the Homecoming Spirit Week, and people kind of missed that, so we're going to bring it for that. And then just the last thing, upcoming, we're going to do our annual Custodian Appreciation Day. So there's the day crew and the night crew, and we have a pizza party, and we bake treats for them, and so we have 2 different sessions, one for the day and one for the night.
Nice.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Any questions?
How do you determine who wins the color?
Oh.
So it's going to be based on your class participation, so it will be counted through your 5th hour, and whoever is wearing the color would be.
So freshmen are pink, sophomores are purple, juniors are white,
and seniors are red. So it falls on Valentine's Day, so we figured we might incorporate those colors into our color day. Yeah.
Any other questions on this side?
No.
Do you have a sponsor, don't you, for the Student Association?
Yes, we do.
Who is it?
It's Miss Ciola, and then the assistant is Miss Kaler.
Did you tell them about the issue, the freshmen, incoming freshmen?
Yeah.
Yes, we had talked about it.
Try to address it for next time. Is there anything else you need from the board?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Great job, guys.
Well, thank you very much for coming. So next up is, this is a good time to leave.
This is a good time if you want to.
Don't want to hear the business, but you're welcome to stay. We encourage participation. Next is the President's report. It's no President's report because he's not here. Superintendent's report.
I have no items to report on. None of my advisory councils have met since our last meeting, and there's been no change in anything that's been discussed. So, no superintendent's report tonight.
Moving on to the principal's report then.
Yesterday, the PTO and our National Honor Society held the second annual Martin Luther King Day of Service in the student cafeteria. During the event, they made 150 basic survival kits for the homeless and donated them to various locations around the community and various shelters as well. Prior to this, the National Honor Society students really worked to get a lot of students to bring in donations that they could help put into the kits, as well as sponsorships from local businesses. The local scholarship applications for seniors will be available on Student Services website on February 1st. So this is a great opportunity for our senior students, and I would encourage parents to take a look because chances are your student qualifies for something. Parents can access the application on the website under Student Services, and applications are due March 8th. If students have any questions about it, guidance counselors are a great resource when it comes to the local scholarships. Recently, we've had a very few successful extracurricular activities. So this past weekend, our girls' POMS team qualified for state, which is this weekend in Bloomington. Earlier this month, our Special Olympics basketball team qualified for state, which will be in March. And tomorrow we have some of our music students going to perform at All-State, and we'll recognize them at the February board meeting. The gymnastics team also took first place at their invitational. So we're really excited to see a lot of groups do well, and we have more playoffs coming up, both for activities and sports in the next month or two. So hopefully we'll have a few more teams advance to their state series. Next, under the principal's report, there are two reports. I'd like to flip it and start with the professional development summary, which is on page 14 of Board Book. This is an annual report that we give twice a year in January and June. It began about 5 years ago, just to clarify how much money was being spent to assist the teachers in improving their instruction. So as a reminder, there are 4 categories. The first is Title I. This is a federal grant based on the number of free and reduced lunch students. Title II is our general professional development, and this is also a federal grant. This year, you'll see on the next page, it'll be a little higher because we had some money roll over from last year. Title IV is a new federal grant that was established under the Every Student Succeeds Act. It authorizes some funding for professional development that supports technology as well as safety. And then the last category is unclaimed tuition reimbursement funds. So per the collective bargaining agreement, after the March payment of tuition reimbursement to the staff, the administration can apply the unused tuition reimbursement dollars for staff development in the upcoming months. There was a question about the timing of this. Staff have to, in order to receive their reimbursement by the March payment, they have to submit their intent and their paperwork in September. So we already know exactly how much money that we will have remaining, and we've learned after doing this 2 years ago for the first time that it's helpful, since there's such a quick turnaround time with 3 months to spend that money, it's helpful to have a plan as to how we want to use it. So if you look on the next page, you can see Title I, we haven't earmarked any money yet. The $6,480 was received in our rollover money, and so we just recently received this, and that's why we haven't allocated that yet. Title II is where a majority of our professional development comes from, and this is where we spend some additional money on technology, advanced placement, professional development for SAT, and then school and district goals. As you can see, we've spent or earmarked almost half of that money that we received this year. And you can see Title IV, and then lastly, our plan for the unused tuition reimbursement funds this year is to provide some staff professional development time over the summer to implement blended learning for one of their classes. So in November, we had about 10 staff members attend a site visit at Huntley High School, and they've been implementing blended learning for several years. So blended learning is really the approach to teaching that combines some online delivery with face-to-face instruction and classroom interactions. And so I'm really excited about the teachers piloting this because I think it will provide our teachers a great opportunity to differentiate some of their instruction and provide some more support to students that may be struggling in their class, while also allowing some of the advanced students to move quicker and challenge them more. So Like we approached our one-to-one rollout, we're going to start very small and slow and test the waters and let it grow organically. But the teachers that went to the site visit were very excited to get started on this. Are there any questions on the professional development report?
How many did you take to Huntley?
We took 10. There's another one coming up, so we could possibly take more, but we took 10.
I went to that one.
Do you ask teachers to attend, or do teachers volunteer? Like, how
For
does
the
it work?
first one, we took teachers that we felt were already doing some version of blended learning or were close to it, so whether they were doing a flipped classroom or they really developed a lot of their materials in Schoology, but we wanted teachers who we felt like would be ready to implement it.
Actually, Bridget helped us as an instructional coordinator.
Correct, and we tried to get one person per department too, if that was possible.
Yeah, I think between the blended learning and the changes in what the state considers a school day, right? Like those two things are going to change the way instruction is delivered. So
Yeah,
we need to be ready for it, right?
Yeah, and it's exciting. Then the next report is the biannual discipline and attendance report. So I'd ask our assistant principal of student affairs, Dave Manning, come up, and this begins on page 9 in your board packet.
Good evening, Dave.
Hello, good evening. Okay, today we're going to review first semester data on attendance and discipline. And looking at some of that data, our attendance came in around 95.35% for first semester, which is a little bit higher than where we were at last year, 95.12. And then if you look back, I did kind of an historical since 14, and we're almost a point there up. So we're pretty happy about where we came in at for overall attendance. I know it's the highest I've seen looking at data here in some time. So first semester, we're on a good streak here. We want to continue it going forward. Total attendance and reason by month, we separated this category out by average excused absences, and those are averages per day, and then average cuts, and then early dismissal, average per period per day. And if you look at the total semester average per period per day for average excused absences, the total is 42.02, which is down from 55.2. If you look at December, I think a mild December helped us out a little bit. So did some sicknesses in the building. We had better health in December, so that's why we had less excused absences, which is a positive. We had more kids in the building and a significant decline from where we were at last year. So we're pretty happy about that number as well. So more kids in the building, better weather helped us out with that. The cuts were up a little bit. October was a month that we highlighted. And looking at our data, this year we've been focusing our efforts on a pocket of students that have had some behavioral and emotional things going on, and where they were either leaving the building early or coming to school and then leaving and things like that. So that pocket of students really affected where we're at with our numbers. We continue to work with our PRIDE program there with some interventions with our deans and our school safety liaison officer, things like that. And I'm going to get to what we're doing on the truancy side of things in a minute. But that's why our cuts were up a little bit from where we're at last year.
So I didn't understand your point.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain it again?
Sure. So cuts.
Plain terms.
Yeah. So a cut would be a student who arrives to campus, is either in attendance for one of our 7 periods, and then decides to leave the building for that period or for that day.
Okay.
And so those cuts can add up if it's a number of periods on top of each other, and or just one period. And so what we were seeing this year, it's a pocket of students that have IEPs or individual education plans that we're working with that are receiving some social emotional support from us, but had significant cuts that added up this year.
Versus last year?
Versus last year,
and
correct.
The year before, because it's gone up a day.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
So Dave, what do? They just walk out?
Correct. Yeah, they walk out, and then we call home, and then the next day we see them, and then we put them through some interventions, whether that be one-on-one time or an alternate day assignment or some social work intervention or what have you. So we look at the resources and what we can allocate to them, but those have added up for those students.
Can you explain, during the day, because we worry about safety of our students,
Mm-hmm.
can students walk out any door of this building?
Yeah, our doors are locked from the exterior.
Right.
On the interior, obviously, they're open, and kids, when they do walk out, we're not going to stand in front of them. You know, if they want to walk out, we're going to talk to them. We're going to try to intervene. But if
So
they
do we
decide to walk
know
out,
every time a student leaves the building during the day? Because we have a closed campus during the day.
through attendance, yes, and teachers are to take attendance the first 15 minutes of each class.
Okay.
So then, you know, once we see that they leave, or typically in these situations, which we'll see here, and I'll show you in our suspension data, that cut, usually we're notified if it's within the PRIDE program that student's looking to leave or is going to leave, and then we'll kind of intervene, and that may end up being like a verbal.
So we
thing.
know when
So
every student leaves the building.
with this program,
we
we do.
stop.
Correct.
Not with every student. I mean, if a student were to sneak out, I mean, there may be a student that goes out a side door that we don't catch until after the teacher takes the 15 minutes of
But do
attendance.
we know if people are leaving through our side doors? Because they also could hold the door and let somebody in the side door, right?
Yeah, and
So, I mean, again, I'm maybe oversimplifying this, but
yeah.
I'm just as concerned if people are just willy-nilly coming and going out of our building, we need to know that, don't we? And it
Yeah.
seems like we could stop them if we wanted to. And again, you have to decide whether we do not, but the other alternative is somebody just holds the door open and lets somebody in.
Yeah.
So how are we monitoring people coming in and out of the building during the day?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, we installed a 32-inch screen down in our Welcome Center, and it has up all of our cameras, all of our surveillance throughout the building. We've added cameras since then, and so they get a good view as to all of our exterior doors.
Okay.
And so they can view that at any time. We also have 6 security on the floor at any time. And then recently, within the last, I want to say 2 weeks before break, I printed out all of our students on early release. They have now that information on their ID cards. So before they leave for the day, after 6th period, they need to show that ID to our security who are at our main entrances.
Oh, okay.
So that's cut down on some of our cuts as well. So, you know, we're shoring that up. Right now, we can't stand by every exterior door, so they will find the cracks here and there. But we're hoping that as we unveil this, you know, this program with the IDs going forward, that it will cut down on the cuts. So.
Hey, David, I noticed November was really high last year and this year. What, do you have any idea why November's so high?
It's always there. And
I'm just curious.
You know, and I dug into that and I've looked at it, and, you know, I thought maybe it was for families leaving early, but that wasn't the case. You know, we kind of uncovered that, and I don't know. You know, it could be doctor's appointments. It could be, you know, this kid's getting sick here and there. It's just, and we're after the honeymoon phase too. We're into the school year. It's the heart of the semester. You know, if a kid gets a sniffle or two and needs to stay home, you know, that may happen. And so that's where we see that there. I'll get to this later as well, but something that we've really attacked this year with our nurses and our psychologists is putting attendance first. We've created an attendance webpage for our parents to view. We put up protocols that I reviewed with the nurse that go over, you know, because sometimes parents need this, when do I call my kid in, and what are the factors that my kid's presenting, whether it's a sickness or whatnot, that would make me call that student, my student, out of class or out of school that day. And that's never been provided in kind of a visual example online before, and so we presented that this year. We not only put that in a district newsletter, but we also put that on our webpage and put that under the parent tab. So that information is present and available now too, and that has helped, I think, going forward. And you look at our December attendance, you know, we had less people calling in December, and that's when that newsletter went out. So I'm hoping, you know, that's hopefully was a part of that, but I'm encouraged that we're going to continue to stay in front of this Attendance Matter initiative with all forces here, with our psychologists, our deans, myself.
That's one other question on this first page. Is there a fourth category, average unexcused absences too?
I think that would just go into cuts, unexcused.
Okay, because the reason I asked is we have roughly 1,600 students, right?
A little bit.
1620.
So I'm
Yes,
do the
or
simple
1,600,
math.
yes.
So 10% is 160, right? And 5% is 80.
Yeah.
Right? So, but if I add, we set our average at, well, that's last year, but it was 95%. But again, these numbers appeared to be generally better than last year, except for the cuts. But if you add them all up, you only get 45, 46, like 47 kids absence. But if 5% is 80, so I forgot to ask the question until you said something. I would have sent you a note, but
sure.
It seems like there's a difference in numbers between the overall attendance and the total attendance by reason. Or is it because we're halfway through the year or something?
Well, I think too, a cut doesn't necessarily mean that that student's going to be out for the entire day.
Well, I know, but that would mitigate, that would say that it's even further off. Because if 5% is 80 students, you're only coming up with like 45.
Yeah, I don't. So this data is pulled right from our database, you know, and so it's generally tracked through our teacher attendance. So when
I apologize for not asking this advance. I think somebody should look and see why we're only coming out with 42 here, and we're saying overall it's 5%.
There could be some other students just medical and.
That's why I'm wondering. That's why I said, does it not include unexcused or something?
Yeah, there is that category out there, whether
you
it's
might want to look at that,
vacations or hospitalizations. Correct.
Sorry about that, Dave, because I forgot to ask that.
I will check into that.
Okay, Dave, you're going through some of the questions you received in regards to the things you're changing or doing, initiatives and continuation.
Yeah, so we talked about the attendance webpage there. The truancy, there was a question asked about the truancy tickets that we wrote as kind of a historical here. Typically, we've been kind of averaging 16, 17. Last year we wrote 23, and this year we wrote 27 truancy tickets for students that have over that 5% attendance percentage on their, I guess, just within their data. And something that we see, you know, after doing multiple interventions with these students, whether that's one-on-one or whether that's in-person meetings or going out to their house and doing home visits, if we're not making any traction whatsoever on that, then we're going to get out there, we're going to utilize the resources that we have with Riverside PD and issue some of those tickets. So a student that cuts as well, that leaves the building for that day, could be issued a truancy ticket as well. So you see kind of the correlation with their cuts and the truancy tickets too. And we talked about the cut, so that was all the questions there. One thing I will note on the last section of the attendance is our Tardies. It's been a huge initiative since I came here 4 years ago. We started off at 16 students average per period that were out of class, not in time. And we cut that down in half in 4 years. And so now, I mean, that's 8 kids that are in class ready to go, which speeds up the time that our teachers have to get their instruction out and ready for our kids. So we're pretty excited about how that's going, and we're going to continue to battle the Tardies for our kids.
Discipline.
All right, our next report, discipline, it goes over several categories. A couple on that left-hand side are the alcohol, drug possession, or smoking, fighting, disrupting the learning environment, gang, theft, weapon possession, and inappropriate or non-compliant behavior. And then we look at that as an average through the months of the school year in the first semester. And alcohol, we had 0 offenses, 0 suspensions for alcohol. Drug possession and smoking, this is a topic that we'll get into here in a second. We had 10. And drug possession and smoking has kind of shifted in what we used to see a lot in the building. 10 years ago, you'd see cigarettes. You'd see students that would actually have leafy marijuana on them and things like that. When we suspend a student for smoking or a drug possession, it's for something that's a legal substance. So it's going to be marijuana or THC oil or something like that. So these aren't vape necessarily e-cigarette suspensions. We typically don't suspend for that offense. We do some alternative interventions for that. So what we saw first semester, we had 6 students that had actual devices on them with marijuana oil in it, which is a trend right now with our population with students across the country. And then we had 4 students that are actually under the influence that smoked. So that's where you got the 10 students and the 10 offenses, and those are suspensions. Going into fighting, and I'll come back to that in a second. Fighting, we had a drop down of 7 compared to 14, which is really good. And I think I contributed that not only to our security team, just being present and aware and stopping before it escalates into a physical altercation, but also our staff is really present in our hallways, 1 through 7 throughout the day. So I really appreciate their efforts as well.
Did you have a melee one day last year too?
We did.
A whole bunch of kids got in the fight.
Yeah, we had a couple of kids get into an altercation last year. So, disrupting learning environment, bullying, intimidation. We had 5 there. 0 gang suspensions. 1 student was suspended for theft. 0 weapon suspensions, inappropriate and non-compliant behavior. This has increased a little bit from where we're at last year. Last year we had 9. This year we had 18 total offenses with 15 students. So one student had, or a couple students had a repeat of suspensions there. Again, we're working with a pocket of students here that either had inappropriate or non-compliant or challenging behavior towards the administration or to staff, and that's where we've seen that increase. So how do we counteract that? That's really through getting in there and working with with our social workers and being creative, thinking outside the box. There's a question about a leadership day. I took students that had 5 or more referrals, 10 or more tardies, 5 or more absences. I put them all together and I did a leadership training day on campus here with them. So that's the type of out-of-the-box stuff that we need to continue to do with these guys is let's get them connected to the school. Let's put leadership type training in front of them to see if we can spark a connection, whether that's through an academic thing or an extracurricular. But that's going to be our focus going forward, and we have this pocket of students that we're working with on that end. Questions coming back from that report here. So total is 41 for the offenses and 38 students, which is on par with where we were at last year.
So 3 students got suspended twice?
Roughly.
One got suspended 3 times.
So going back to the vape, and that's a trend right now with our young students across the country, like I alluded to. We've worked with Riverside Police Department on not just ticketing these students and having them go to court and seeing a judge and then looking at community service or whatever that judge hands out to them, but more hitting them in a pocketbook and knowing that if kids come here, Riverside's going to give them an actual ticket, where it's going to be $100 for any type of electronic cigarette device, or $150 ticket for any type of card or any device with marijuana oil in it. And so that could be up to a $250 fine for a student that brings that on campus. We made sure that our students were well aware of that in our grade level assembly meetings with them, but this is something that we needed to get in front of. Our deans went out to an annual dean conference and we're asking our colleagues, what are you doing out there? What are we doing to combat this? And a lot of them didn't have any answers to it. A lot of them, it's just the same old tried and true. It's the suspension and then the fine or the court appearance. And not only did we do that, but we're doing the ticketing as well, but we're also, I've done posters in the dean's office. We did the district newsletter. Staff, we just did a staff training at our last institute, our staff faculty training day, where we just presented to our staff, what are you looking like, what are kids presenting to the classrooms in the building, what are kids doing now, because it's completely different, like I said, than when we were at 10 years ago. The health office had some related information about the harming effects that this has for our students. We're going to be doing some discipline articulation because I think we really need to hit our 8th graders hard before they come into our building this year or next year, because that's where it's present right now is in our middle schools as well. We're also, again, going to be really present with material throughout the building about the harming effects to it, and then our security staff does bathroom checks, and they scan those bathrooms, so that's where it's being done at. It's being done in places that are not in a classroom, not in an open area. They're in contained areas such as bathrooms, so we go in, we scan it, so that it kind of gives us a little data as to when we scan those and then when kids are doing things, so we're continuing to stay on top of that as well.
So can I ask, is that the Riverside Police Department that they issue a citation and then they pay the fine?
Correct. Yeah, it goes through a local adjudicator at the police department. We also have been working with Brookfield as well. We got some information that students were getting some of these electronic cigarettes from a local store and things like that, and we've worked with them and they have intervened and helped us out. So it's been a good relationship with both departments, and it's something that we're facing. It's present, and it's a thing that we're always gonna have to stay on top of.
Have you reached out to the feeder schools? Do you know if it's a big problem in their junior high school?
It has been, yes. Yeah, and we need to do a little bit more, and I think that discipline articulation that we were talking about with the deans, that's going to be occurring here soon. We need to do more of that with them.
A couple of the local police departments are also doing some operations for local businesses who are selling the vape pens to minors, correct, and the e-cigs to minors?
Yes, yep. A couple other questions here. We've increased our security a little bit. just to shore up some of our doors. Security has been a big thing for us this year. We've enhanced our lockdown protocols, and we want to ensure that we have safety and have security present not only during the morning kind of rush, but the afternoon as well. So we've extended hours. Our hours now are 7 to 5:30, and our hours are kind of that way prior to adding another person on. Just we shifted his hours a little bit. So now we have more security presence after school now until 5:30, where we only had one person on until 5:30 previously, which has helped out a lot.
Just with the size of the building and all the activities we have going on, we extended one security member's for part-time. He's still part-time, but it extended a few hours a day so that we have 2 people in the morning at 7 o'clock, one A and G, and then we have 2 people in the building afterwards, because we're a lot of students staying, going to different activities throughout the building, clubs, sports, practices, waiting for a practice to start. And so we needed some extra help with supervision after school as well.
And then we'll continue to do leadership training. There is a training coming up here at Addison Trail High School, so we're going to take 15 more students out, and I think that's important. And these are students that are heavily involved within various extracurriculars, so that they can come back and then increase the culture, increase the climate in which that these students are a part of. And so we want to continue to do that going forward. So we look forward to that conference here next month.
The point you made on work with staff on related positive incentives for students turning on in their phones prior to the start of class utilizing a hero system.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? I mean,
sure. So
sounds good, but I don't know what it means.
We held an event in the fall with screenagers, and it was all about disconnecting from social media. And our students, with these phones in front of them, it triggers senses in our brain that are similar to a drug addict. And it's really hard for our kids to disassociate themselves from these cell phones, these devices. And so what we've done to counteract that a little bit is that we've purchased these cell phone parking lots that teachers can put by their desks. And it's just labeled 1 through 30, and then students can put their phone in those parking lots and then kind of like disconnect. And it gives them a reason to disconnect and focus in on their studies, which has been helpful. And it's kind of a voluntary thing, but students that do that get hero points from us. And then in turn, we do incentive days in the cafeteria. So if they have 15 points, they can come see me, and I'll give them a candy bar or a T-shirt.
That's what I thought it meant. I thought they weren't allowed to use their phones during class.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling with how we did this thing to make them follow the rules, and a lot of them, it's voluntary. So what is it, everybody else who doesn't do it on their phone, or what? I mean,
yeah. So students,
doesn't it say in the student handbook they can't use their phone during class? I remember reading that.
Our handbook
so
expectation.
Explain how this voluntary great thing we give them points for works versus the ones who don't turn them in if they're using their phones during class.
Well, the handbook expectation is to be put in away and stored away during instructional hours, right? And so what we're seeing is this is always the connection, whether it's in your pocket, whether it's in your backpack. I want to check it. It's that temptation to look at your phone. If it buzzes, if it vibrates, if you hear it. So we want to take that completely away from you.
That part I get.
Yeah.
What about the ones that's buzzing and vibrating? If they pick it up and use it, what do we do something about that?
Yeah, so that's an internal, that's more of a staff managed thing. Okay. That it's a managed behavior in the classroom. Okay. And then if that's a defiant thing that continues, and that turns into a referral that comes out to the dean's office. But that's more of like an in-class management technique that teachers are.
And we can't put a cell blocker because of an emergency, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's unfortunate. You should look into figure out a way around that.
Yeah, I don't know if
right.
But kids can use their cell phones at other times, like in study halls and lunch and in between class periods, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I've seen, I mean, in the middle school where I'm at, sometimes it's 2 to 1. Like kids are creating on their device and they're looking up information on their phone. So like if they're using them for good and not evil, like I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to have 2 to 1. Just my opinion.
If they're doing that.
Right.
Who's doing that?
Well, if you give them meaningful work to do, they will do it. Kids want to learn and they want to create. And so if you give them meaningful work to do, they will do it. If you give them...
That's why we spent all the money on the Chromebooks, isn't it? We give them devices to do their meaningful work, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, any other questions that were submitted, Dave?
That would be it.
I don't think so.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Any questions? Questions? Thanks, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Good
your
work.
report. Kristen, anything else for you to add? Thank you. That brings us to the Chief Financial Officer's report. Scott.
Okay. If we could look at Board Book page 19, please. We'll go over the December 2018 financials. The first report that you'll see is the monthly financial report. This represents 50% of our fiscal year. Total monthly revenue from all funds was approximately $324,000. Out of those main categories of revenue, general state aid, the evidence-based funding formula accounted for $173,000, and rental income generated $81,000 for the month. On the expenditure side, total monthly expenditures were $6.6 million. Operating expenditures for the month were $1.89. If we look down at the expenditures, salary and benefits account for $1.48. Out-of-district tuition for the month was $126,000. And then you'll see we had to make a bond and interest payment of $4.7 million. Our operating fund balances at the end of December was roughly $14 million. Just as a reminder, the board has restricted $3 million. So if you look at it, it would be $11 million for our operating fund balance. If we look at the monthly financial statements, the first report on Board Book page 20 just shows our beginning balances of all funds with revenue and expenditure year to date ending December 31st. If we look at the revenue side for the first
which is on
6
21.
months, which is Board Book page 21, you'll see that our revenue is down a little bit from last year's. With it, some of the things that we're noticing here is that the state hasn't made as many payments that it made last year. So they've made one payment from this year that they've given to us, which was the 4th payment from last year. So this year we haven't seen anything with it. So it's a trend out there within the state. We're monitoring it. I don't know if it's going to be 2 payments or 3 payments by the end of June. So that's something that we're going to keep an eye out on with it. With that, transportation is really affected on that. So you'll see why that is actually at 34%. So we're missing a couple transportation payments on that, which would really help out with it. And then with the ed fund, we're also not getting some of the special ed private placement money from the state.
We should eventually see that reimbursement.
Yes.
But it's just a matter of when you see it.
When you're
whether
going to
it's
see
this
it.
fiscal year. And
Could be this year, could be next year.
Whether it's in this year.
Don't you wish you could pay your bills like that? Maybe this year, maybe next year. I don't know, when we get around to it.
If we go to Board Book page 22 and look at the expenditure side, things are tracking fairly close to what we were doing last year. We're at 52% of our operating budget. If we track exactly where we're at, I think we're going to come in at budget or under budget, barring any major emergencies that pop up.
Oh, that would depend if we get the payments though too, right?
He's talking about
the expenditure side.
Expenditure side, okay.
The next report is the revenue expense report. There were some questions submitted on the revenue expense report. There was a question on Board Book page 23 in regards to levy prior year. We're currently sitting at 98% in pretty much all the funds with that prior year. We're slightly under budget as to what was budgeted on it, but if we get the same tax collection rate that we have budgeted and people make their March installment on time and we collect that from the county, I'm anticipating that we'll get overall collection between current year and prior year to average out to what is budgeted out there within the current budget. Then again, here we're counting on our taxpayers to make that installment in March with it. The next question submitted on the revenue expense report was on Board Book page 24 under student fees for world language. It looks like it's about $7,400 over budget.
Can you stop there? You said this is part of my problem. Student fees, where does it say world language?
WL.
WL.
So WL stands for world
language.
And then WRK is workbook.
Yeah, so these are all the fees that are associated with the different courses within the world language department.
Okay.
After pulling out all the fees that were collected and going through the distribution of everything, the AP fees are still left in there. So that needs to be redistributed out and moved from the board account into the student activity account for AP testing.
For world language.
To pay for the AP test for world language.
Okay.
That's approximately $6,800 will be moved out of that account.
Were there other questions submitted?
The questions that I asked on the schedule are just something to consider when you're doing the next report.
Yeah, we
Page
don't-
59, you don't have to go through those.
Okay.
It's just something to think
For
about.
the contract tool?
Yeah, and then there was a question submitted on 50, on the contract tool on 59, about the POTS lines.
Yes, we are at 7 total POTS lines after cleaning up everything. They're approximately $43 a line on that, so we're doing really well with keeping that at a minimal. And then there was also a question submitted on Arrigo. Arrigo does the annual startup for all the rooftop units for the fall and into the spring.
The cooling and the
Heating and cooling. We have approximately 30 rooftop units, and that's what the $16,000 annual contract is with Arrigo. We have not bid this out. It's not over the bidding threshold of $25,000. The reason that we kind of keep Arrigo is they've been in-house here working with these units since the renovation on it. They're very familiar with it. They know what is going on, and then we also have them do the repairs that come up as needed. The repairs run anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000 to cover all those different rooftop units or anything that happens. So that's why we keep Arrigo on.
So the one thing that I talked about today, though, is we have to pay prevailing wage rate. So we just asked them to keep, we asked for like every other year for an hourly rate that we're being billed, and we make sure it's to the prevailing wage rate, or within that prevailing wage rate, so that there's no gouging. But what's kind of unique about us is that we do have 30 rooftop units, where most schools have one large chiller and one large boiler, where we still have a lot of individual rooftop units. So Joel said basically what they do is they come out before the cooling season and gauge each one, tune up each one, and then they do the same thing before the heating season. So with the cold blast over this weekend, we had a drop in gas pressure, so our burners were only turned on when we're getting like 3 pounds per pressure. So we had to lower all temp thermostats to 50 degrees this morning and do like a hard start. So the building was quite cold for most of the day, but Rigo's been here and they do a nice job in helping service a lot of that stuff.
Well, Joel's trusted, right?
He treats it like it's his own house. So.
Like Joel says, you only get as good as the guy that comes out and services it.
Well, very true.
So he's very impressed with when they do come out. They're very reliable and get out in a timely fashion.
Did they send the same guy all the time, or is it?
It's usually about two guys that come out that know the system, and then they work very closely with Joel's lead man, Burham, to kind of work together to troubleshoot these units.
Walsh and Associates under residency, we have the hourly rate. Historically, it's around $10,000 a year, but those are residency investigators, depending on how many cases and home inspections we have to do or investigate.
Just curious.
So historically, it's around $10,000 a year. Scott, were there any other questions submitted?
No, but
State financial profile.
There's a couple other reports that I'd like to look at.
Sorry.
There is the second quarter paid building rental on page 56. Quarter 2, you can see that total revenue was $24,000, total expenditure is $6,000, so we had a surplus of roughly $18,000 for the second quarter. Year-to-date surplus is approximately $35,000 that you will see on board book page 57. And as a reminder, this is just on paid invoices.
What does that mean?
Because some stuff is I know you'll say oh, the water polo should have more expenses, but it depends on when we actually receive payment.
Oh, I got you.
Or they do installments.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
And what was the other one, the financial profile?
The financial profile, our district auditor did update the final audit on that and submit it to the state. I have to go in and verify with the state that this is what it came out to be. You have seen this before out there. Just want to recognize that the state uses 5 indicators to determine what the financial profile is for the district. The district did receive financial recognition at 3.8 out of 4.0, up from 3.7 the previous year.
And we got the top rating on 4, and the one we didn't was the percent long-term debt
The
to
long-term
margin.
debt.
Okay.
You know, on that last long-term debt, I was trying to figure out where the percent came from.
Of the 34.48.
Right.
So they take the outstanding debt, so we have about 40 million outstanding, and then the 61 million is that calculation they do to determine how much, what's our cap capacity
yeah, so it's
based
the
on
difference
based
over
on the
the-
total assessed value of the property.
Sure.
So since we have 40 million outstanding against a cap of 60 million, it's actually I said that wrong. That's not 34%, is it?
Yeah, would it be more like 50?
It'd be more like 60. I mean, it'd be more like 66, wouldn't it?
I think, is the 34% all we have left?
Yeah.
34, yeah. Oh, that's how much we have left then, John. It's the difference. It's the difference between the 61 and the 39.
Oh, so it's like 22 over 61.
Yeah.
Roughly. Okay. Okay.
So it's how much
Yes.
capacity we have left,
Sure.
which is 34%.
Okay.
Scott, anything else?
There was no further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Good job.
Thank you. At this point, it's time for visitor statements. Let me ask, does somebody want to make a visitor statement? You do? Okay. Let me read this then, and you can come up, okay? The Board of Education welcomes the current participation of its citizens in the business of the school district. There are 2 points in the meeting where visitors' statements are scheduled. Citizens are welcome to raise questions or make comments at either one. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual and cannot be combined. Please note the Board of Education will not answer questions or engage in dialogue during visitor comments. If a person would like additional time to address the board, such a request should be submitted in writing 48 hours before the meeting to the superintendent. In addition, the Board of Education is interested in receiving suggestions and concerns from members of the community. Any individual may make a suggestion or express a concern at the district or the school office. All suggestions and or concerns will be referred to the appropriate level staff member or district administrator who is most able to respond in a timely manner. Each concern or suggestion shall be considered on its merit. An individual who is not satisfied after following the channels of authority may file a grievance under Board Policy 2260, Uniform Grievance Procedure. Neither this policy nor the Uniform Grievance Procedure creates an independent right to a hearing before the Board. For more details, please refer to Board Policy 2230, Public Participation in Board of Education Meetings and Petitions to the Board, and Board Policy 8:110, Public Suggestions and Concerns. Would you like to step up first? Have a seat if you'd like, and then would you just tell us your name and what community you live in, please?
Hello, I'm Nick. I live in Riverside by the pool. I was gonna speak on the phone situation at RB.
Okay.
As a student, I know I can look to my left or my right and I see a student on their phone, and every math period I don't want to have to know that my phone's on my person, so I usually go put my phone up. But I was thinking, not this year, next year, just whenever, with the phone parking lot, you can call it, if there were phone chargers in it, because personally when my phone is charging, I feel pretty safe and I know that it's there in good use. So if there were phone chargers, I feel more students would put their phone up, and that's really all.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Way to contribute tonight.
Anybody else want to make a comment? Okay, then we'll move on. Old business, life safety items, capital improvements.
Today was our first meeting with Mechanical Concepts to discuss the pool project that will be taking place starting in May. And I do have a short update from Joel and the Mechanical Concepts that I'm going to put on the webpage, so it just summarizes, and I'll also put that in the newsletter based on the board's request last month.
Thank you. I just realized I forgot to ask, I skipped an item. Discussion information items, does anybody want to add on my left, discuss an information item?
I would like to hear an update on the academy, the freshman academy that we put into place this year.
Do you want it today, or do you want it?
No, not today. Now that the first semester is over, I'd be curious to hear from either the teachers or Kylie just how the first semester went.
So we won't, since I was out of order, Gina, we'll save, for this one's if you want to have something discussed.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't
today, and then right before we go into closed, we have one if you want something for a future meeting, but you prefer this in a future meeting? Yeah. Kevin, can you take that down for her? Anybody on this side? Nope. Okay, sorry about that. So then we move on to new business. The only new business today are a matter for closed session, which are personnel, student discipline, individual student matters, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable imminent or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety. So this is the second point. We usually have more new business, by the way, but this is the second point for public comments. Does anybody want to come back up or make additional public comments? That moves us to the discussion items, which there are none for today. And Gina gave us one consideration of items for future meeting. Anybody else have, John, item for future meeting? Anybody on this side? Nope. No. Okay, it's time. Does somebody want to
resolve
read the
that the Board of
resolution?
Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, student discipline, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Wes, made by Ramona.
Mrs. Fresco?
Yes.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Mr. Smithing?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes. It's almost 8. We started 10 after 8 in our closed session.